If you had to get a tattoo, what would it be?
I would never get a tattoo. I'm not getting a tattoo.
I know you would never, but you have to. You have to continue to live.
Yes.
You have to get a tattoo.
What's the smallest, the fewest pin pricks that I can possibly have?
You have to have at least 4 square centimeters of coverage.
Oh, no. Kill me.
Kill me.
If that's the option, you're going to shoot me if I don't get a tattoo, go ahead and just pull the trigger. There's no way. Absolutely no way I'm getting that many needle pokes.
You and my wife both are so successful at making my little game so unfun for me. I'll ask her, I'll be like some company will get bought. I'll be like, oh man, they just got acquired. And I'll be like, guess how much? And she'll look at me and she'll be like, $1,000. I'm like, I fucking hate you.
Quiet, please.
And then she'll be like, $10 trillion. And I'll be like, God damn it. And she does this on purpose. So I don't play this stupid
Oh my God, I
game
love
with her.
your wife.
She does it all the time to me.
That's so funny.
Pretty much every time. That's what she hates
3,
the game.
2.
The Apple Company presents a Truly Terrible Podcast. Welcome to Nonsense Season 2, Episode 8. I'm Jeff Parker.
I'm CJ Little.
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time, we'll look at Leap Year.
Oh my God, is that today?
Leap Day is today. Leap Year has been the whole year.
I've been writing the wrong date on my check for hours.
It's National Toast Day. Some toast lovers choose to celebrate by hosting their own private toast-making parties where guests are invited to select their own favorite bread.
Nobody does this.
Whether it's white bread, brown bread, sourdough bread, it doesn't matter. And bring it along with their toasters, ready to spend the evening making lots and lots of toast.
You've made this all up. No one's going to a toast party.
It just feels like we've reached peak National Day.
Sure.
If we have a National Toast Day.
No one's doing this. This is made up. No.
I think we've hit the end.
Are we doing your house tomorrow for toast?
People
day?
are actually doing it. There's actually a World Bread Award. And the World Bread Award has a hashtag for hashtag Toast Day and all. And it's just like,
insane.
By the way, I love baking bread. I love making sourdough bread. I absolutely think that's so much fun. I love making popovers.
I support toast. First of all, I've never heard it called brown bread, but I don't see colors on my bread. I just see bread. Which, by the way, look at the shape of me. That is true because I will just eat any fucking bread. I really don't care. You get that weird.
You never have a chance to see it.
No, that weird like dark brown bread you get at
pumpernickel.
The pumpernickel, yeah, the pumpernickel.
Is there anything better? That's so good.
You know what's so funny? Cheesecake Factory. They give you like the little piece of sourdough and then a little piece of pumpernickel.
That's not good pumpernickel.
But everybody would leave that on the table. And just like, I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to eat the sourdough. And then one day I like tried it and I was like, you fucking people are missing out. This is better than the shitty sourdough.
But there's much better pumpernickel. There's so much better pumpernickel. But we had CPK last night, and this is the problem we're going to say with cooking things and making things yourself generally. And I used to like their sourdough bread, so I had a bite of their sourdough bread since I have begun making my own sourdough bread. And what happens is, as you make something, you tune into the things that you specifically like more and more.
Like flavor.
And so their sourdough bread was like, wow, this is terrible.
This is me in every barbecue joint I went. I was literally having drinks last night for a friend's birthday at a barbecue joint. And they said, do you want anything to eat? And I said, no, I already ate. And they said, what did you have? And I said, good barbecue. While the owner was literally standing 5 feet away from me.
And also, I realized they're under a different set of constraints. To make bread on a commercial scale
100%.
is a completely different game.
Well, yes and no. Acme's figured this out. Acme makes amazing bread at scale.
Yes, there are a few people who figured it out.
And by the way, do you know how many types of bread they make? Acme? Do you know how many varieties?
Just the one, and I know that because I just asked your wife.
You would think they have over 100 product SKUs, and they're all fucking amazing. I came back from San Francisco with 3 of them.
Yeah.
And I took the last loaf, which was hard as a fucking rock, and I made French toast out of it that was delicious.
I'm sure it was the best French toast you've ever made.
And then croutons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made croutons. I'm like, I was afraid I was going to break one of my knives cutting this shit. Like, I thought about going outside and getting a power tool and cutting with a Sawzall.
This show, it was about technology and business and entertainment, and really what it's going to turn into is
now it's about bread.
Cooking with Jeff and CJ.
Totally.
How is your week going?
I didn't celebrate National Bread Day or National Toast Day. I had no toast parties.
And I didn't invite you over to bring your toaster and try and bring whatever bread you want.
No, but I did notice there were a bunch of people at your house with toasters, so I realized you're having a party. You just didn't invite me to it.
There was no parking left on the street, sorry.
So far, my favorite part of this week has been, I say random shit to everyone, including my kids. I said to my youngest son the other day, I said, you are a goofball.
Sure.
And the kid turned to me, he didn't even miss a beat, and he said, you're a nut. And we just started saying this back and forth, and it's the funniest fucking thing. I just say, you're a goofball. He says, you're a nut. I say, you're a goofball. And then I finally asked him the other day, I said, okay, well, if I'm a nut, what kind of nut am I? And I thought he'd say like an almond or a pistachio or something, because he knows all these nuts.
Sure.
Again, doesn't miss a beat. He looks at me and he says, you're a corn nut. And I was like, how do you know what what a fucking corn nut is. I don't eat them. My wife doesn't eat them. We've never had corn nuts. So now this is our new thing where I'm really just living the dream, going back and forth between goofball and corn nut.
Oh man, enjoy that. It goes away so
a lot of fun.
Fast.
It's a lot of fun. Do you have a nickname or food related story for your week?
When I finish recording this show in 40 more minutes, I get in the car and I'm going to go see some old dear friends who I have not seen in a long time. One of them is coming to town. And so we're all, and they picked the restaurant they wanted to go to, which is Father's Office. The only thing I'm going to say about it is the bar has gotten so high in Los Angeles.
Sure. I used to have my mail forwarded to the one in Santa Monica. I was there probably 5 nights a week. Everyone always raved about their burger. I think it's better than mediocre. I do not think it's the best burger in LA. This really is a cooking show now, isn't it?
Well, my point is there are few things in life I love more than getting to hang out with old friends. We got to get to our headlines. Are you cool with that?
We should probably get back to our show. Yeah.
All right. We got so many and we have a very small amount of time to fit them into.
Okay, let's go. Let's do rapid fire.
Apple has wound down its electric car effort after decades-long efforts to come up with whatever kind of electric car. It was never clear if they were going to make an autonomous car.
It was unknown.
We didn't know if they were going to be Tesla or they were going to be Waymo or they were just going to make an electric car.
They bought a patent. Itself. Yeah, at some point they bought a patent on window tint that could change.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, nobody knew where the fuck they were going.
Progressive lenses for your car.
But I think this is where you and I will rarely agree on something. The point is that they didn't know where they were going. They're trying to figure it out. And that's what you have to do in this. You're a fucking $3 trillion company.
The right way to come at it. You should come at it going, we're not exactly sure what, we know this is a category we're interested in.
Yeah, sure.
Let's explore everything and then see where we can do the best work.
And while they never confirmed any of this Apple car rumors, right? Tim would talk about it occasionally in an interview, like, hey, maybe we do a thing. They hired a whole bunch of amazing execs from the car industry.
Car companies. Sure. Some huge name people.
I don't think you're using that on the watch product line. I don't think you need the guy who was the lead and the EV team at BMW to help you with the Vision Pro. My hunch is you're doing something along cars. But yeah, I actually think this is a net positive thing for Apple. They have other efforts that are all, assuming most of the engineers on this Apple car project were AI minded. They've got plenty of
I'm not sure that's true. I think they were all over the place. At one point, they had 5,000 employees just working on the car. I think by the time they ended the experiment a couple days ago, they were down to 1,200.
Sure.
They had some really amazing people. But they spent billions of dollars on this thing. They worked over a decade on it. And then there was a 12-minute meeting and the whole thing was over.
Electric motors are off the rack.
Now they are, for sure.
They already have a great team for textiles and all interior shit. They got that figured. The unknown here is the self-driving part. And I felt like that's where Apple really needed to get involved. And
it's the hard part for everybody.
And if I had to bet, and this is something I think you and I have talked about a lot in the past. If you had to bet on a type of company to crack the nut on self-driving cars, what type of company would you bet on?
A company who doesn't need to make profit anytime soon, because this is going to be a decades-long bet.
Yeah, that's a good corollary. Yeah, but that actually leads to my bigger review on this, which is that's why you probably need to bet on a technology company, right? I don't think GM is going to crack the nut. You need a technology company, and then if you look at that, there's only a handful.
This is part of the problem why they shut it down. Apple's board was saying you need to come to market with a product sooner than later.
Sure.
That's not the right way. You can't do that with self-driving. You come up with you have a product when you have a safe product, and not 1 minute before.
But guys, don't rush it. It's only been 10 years.
Right.
Give it some time.
That's what I'm saying. This is not a decade-long project. This is a decades-long project.
Let's get a couple commits to the code base under our belt. Let's not just go in there and just pull the plug after a decade. I mean, come on.
I think if you weren't going to be patient with it, if you weren't going to say this can go along as an R&D project for as long as it needs to until we have a safe
they might come back to it. Who knows?
Version of this. Yeah, they may come back to it. Until you have a safe version of it, you don't need to have any pressure to release anything.
I suspect it's going to be a Google Waymo or an Apple device or, like the FANG companies, like a Microsoft. I don't know, Meta's not doing this, but it's going to be some technology that's going to nail this. Probably not Netflix. Probably not Microsoft, hopefully.
Waymo's really close. That Waymo really experience is really great.
My concern about the Microsoft car is a handful of things. One, remember the Zune.
Facade.
Two, the B-sod of death. You're doing
the blue screen of
you're
death.
Doing 80 on the freeway and it just fucking locks the steering wheel at 2 degrees of input and it's just just blue screen and you're like, now what?
Let me go back to Apple canceling their car. It's Project Titan was the name of it. I think we mentioned.
The thing about the Apple car, the reason this thing was doomed to begin with is it was only going to come in one color, white. Just white. Haven't our fine friends at Apple been into some other shit this week? I feel like this has been an Apple news cycle week.
Apple's decision to drop the iPhone web apps in the EU is now under the scrutiny of the EU.
Sure.
The EU doesn't like the idea that they're going to drop web apps.
Well, yeah. I mean, Apple just said, how do we make money on these fucking things? And then they just dropped them.
They can't. Right. Yeah. Basically, it's allowing apps onto the iPhone, which I think is what the EU wanted. We'll see. We're going to see how this shakes out.
The shitty statement from Apple was something along they cited very low user adoption, which I think is kind of a bogus thing to hide behind. Yeah. don't support them, of course it has low adoption.
Let's move on. There's more Apple stories here. Netflix confirms it's cutting off Apple billing for legacy subscribers. So if you were subscribing through the iPhone to Netflix and they had to pay 30%, Netflix is no longer doing that. Your subscriptions...
I'm kind of shocked it's taken them this long to do this.
The thing that always strikes me as unfair about it, though, is there are just certain companies who are allowed to force you to pay for things on their website versus on iOS.
Yeah.
And most of the companies are not allowed to do that. That seems crazy. That seems really unfair.
Well, what do you mean? I think all companies are allowed to do it out of band themselves. Apple doesn't restrict you from doing that per se.
No, but you can't tell them. You can't tell them on the iOS app. And that is what Netflix is doing, is saying they are allowed to tell you, go pay for this on the website.
Is Apple's argument that you can't tell them about the internet? Don't tell them about the internet. It's our secret.
Well, they won't let you put out the app until you take that stuff out.
Yeah.
Apple's Vision Pro components cost $1,500, but that's not the full story.
They charged me a lot more than that for mine.
Yeah, this is the report about what the Vision Pro parts cost Apple, and it's less than half the price. This is like the first educated estimate teardown. It's a fairly thoughtful estimate if you look at it.
It is. It's very thoughtful. The part of this, though, that I thought was interesting, it's not the, this is the 44% of the base price cost, and they've got margin. No, there's a shit ton of R&D and marketing, yada, yada, yada. I don't care about any of that. What's interesting to me was just the costs of the key components and where they chose to spend money.
Yeah.
The micro OLED displays, so there's one for each eye.
Right.
Unless you're a pirate, then you just get one. But there's one for each eye, and it's like $460 for the two of those.
Yes.
Which is a pretty significant chunk, right? It's about a third of the total COGS.
It's the right place to put the expense, though, I would argue.
Without a doubt, right? And then they also put a display on the outside. It's called the eyesight display, which is what people see when you're wearing the douchey headset.
Glue some googly eyes to it. That's basically what you've done. Crackgate is real. Apple Vision Pro users report cracks appearing out of nowhere.
So I have not checked mine today.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
Because you haven't checked yours in weeks. When's the last time you opened your Vision Pro?
That's not important, okay? That goes into the category of number of root canals I've had, and we do not have to discuss that on this show. Let me just say that everyone in my family agrees it's the best purchase we've made in a very long time.
Excellent.
To be quite honest with you, I don't even know where it is right now. So maybe I'll try to find it later.
Okay, enough with the headlines. Up next, we're going to talk about the history of leap year.
I don't know anything about it, so I'm hoping this is your segment.
Let's find out.
What do you think about your calendar?
I like my calendar. I don't like that it's always so full.
Okay.
I like to leave chunks of my calendar open so that I can do things that I need to do that are not part of busy work, that are not be at this meeting or that meeting or whatever. So I work hard to keep open space, but I would die without my calendar.
So that you can fill it with cable labeling?
Yes. I want to set aside large chunks of time for cable labeling. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Sadly, we are the same person. So your biggest complaint about your calendar is that it's just too full.
Like I say, I work hard to carve out open space, but yes, it's crammed full of, and I'm like, there's just so many little things that you have to get done in life.
But the other parts you're okay with, like 7-day week, 5+2, weekdays, weekends, that part you're all okay.
Well, if there was a way to make a 10-day week.
Funny.
If there was a way to make it's somehow, 365 is not my favorite number. It's not even a good number for how long the year should be.
Okay.
It doesn't work for anybody.
Understood. You realize there are some physical properties that have helped us define this, right?
Right. That's the part of the problem. But we could speed the Earth up and slow it down, and we could go to a metric calendar, right?
Of course. Just like stopping those satellites in the last episode, how easy that would be. Just put something in front of them. How hard can it be? It's super simple.
The funny thing to me was you make fun of me for saying this, and I even say you could put a missile up there, and then you mentioned, they could do it with an ICBM. What do you think the M stands for?
But you're not just parking it in front of it. You just make it sound like they're going so fast. You just park something in front of it.
You just get something in the way of it.
The ICBM would slam in front of it.
Are we still going around on this?
Yeah. I'm just, as you know, I clearly have a bone to pick with my lack of knowledge about satellites.
All right.
So I'm attempting here to make that seem not as bad.
This is not a satellite segment. Tell me what's going on in the world. Do I like my calendar?
Yes.
Yes, I love my calendar. I live by my calendar. I would be in massive amounts of trouble without my calendar. I can't remember anything in my head. So if I don't write it down in my calendar, then I'm really in trouble.
Yeah, that's the one thing I took from David Allen's Getting Things Done is you have to write things down in a place that you trust and then use it as your only reference. And once I did that for my calendar, it became super easy because now I don't have to waste precious neurons, the few that I have left,
holding things.
Remembering that, on Friday I have a school event or whatever. What I had to do in order to tell this segment the way that I wanted to was talk a little bit about histories of calendars. Not a lot, because there is a lot.
Yeah, sure.
And I think it could be interesting to do a more deeper calendar segment in the future. But here, I just wanted to talk, sort of cover like some of the calendars of the past and how we ended up where we are today. Because as you know, today is a very special day. What is today?
Today is a day we have every 4 years, except every 100 years, which is leap year.
Close. You're close. You're not right.
Oh,
but you're close.
I'm not right.
You're not right. You're going to learn something today.
I knew there was going to be problems because
You're close.
It's complicated.
It is complicated, but it's pretty cool. So
every 100 years, except occasionally.
No, making it worse. You want to try again?
The math I know is really complicated.
The math is pretty cool. In some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. What I think is interesting, it's not the math so much, it's getting the humans to like understand it in some way, right? Like You'll see. Let me. And
I don't remember it. I know it's complicated. By the way,
it's pretty
go
crazy.
back even further. If you're going to do some of the history, you got to go back to when there were lunar calendars, which was really crazy.
Totally.
And then combination lunar and solar calendar.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Tell your story.
No, that's kind of where I'm starting the story, right? I mean, so you think of like, well, why does a calendar exist? Or why did it first come to exist?
Because you have to know what day you're getting your hair cut.
Exactly. And you have to know like when the Vikings are playing, right? You
Sure.
need to know.
Or when the Vikings are invading, sure.
That's where it's came from. We're invading. Yes, I see. Your version's better than mine. But you think about, okay, we need a way to keep track of days and sort of larger divisions of time. You think about it around cultural purposes, religious purposes, and then practices, right? Like astronomy and agriculture. Those were the big things then that you had to sort of figure out. You can't go plant your seeds at the wrong time of year. It seems like archaeologists have reconstructed methods of timekeeping that go back to prehistoric times, at least as old as the Neolithic, which is around the 9th millennium BC.
Okay.
So roughly speaking, we've had timekeeping calendars for over 10,000 years in some form. Mm-hmm. So it's not new per se. Now it's changed a lot, but I didn't know when we ended up with what we have now.
But the nice thing is before all that, you could get away with missing things. You could get away with not going to meetings because we don't have a calendar when nobody's invented that yet.
Yeah. You show up late to your hunting and gathering session, and you just go, "I'm sorry, I lost my rock." That's it. You were fine.
Melrose is terrible, and the sundial doesn't work.
Yeah, I had it set to Mesopotamia time. Sorry, I'm off. Now, as Jeff mentioned earlier, spoiler alert, calendars in antiquity were usually lunisolar.
Lunisolar? Say that again.
Lunisolar.
First of all, I love the prefix loony. Because it means both by the moon, and of course it also means crazy. The two are one and the same.
Yeah, totally. That's why you howl at the moon, right?
Yeah.
These calendars in antiquity were usually lunisolar, depending on the introduction of these intercalary months. Now, that's a very interesting word. Intercalary months to align the solar and the lunar years. So they tried to make these calendars fit for both.
Right.
It was mostly based on observation, but there have been early attempts to model the pattern of this intercalation algorithmically. We've seen this as far back as like the 2nd century with what's called the Cogni calendar. My point here is for a very long time, we've been trying to figure out how to do this.
How to make calendars.
In a way that is algorithmic. Yeah.
It's complicated.
We can do several standalone segments on this. Today, I just wanted to provide a bit of history for the context of this sort of weird every 4 years sort of leap year thing that we do and how we ended up here. So do you know the lineage of the calendar that we use today? The one that you and I are talking about that we have all our, dentist appointments in? Like, do you know where it started?
Well, there has to be like Julius Caesar had to make a ruling, and there had to be probably a calendar that was terror. I'm guessing here, right?
You're doing very well.
And then there's an adjustment probably that's the Gregorian calendar. That's more the calendar that we use.
Okay, he knows his calendars, folks.
Is any of that true?
That's all true.
Okay.
So you're very good. I'm glad you know all these things.
I don't know much about it, but that vague little bit I know.
So the version we use now starts sort of, it looks the most familiar to us immediately before the Julian calendar, which was what we commonly call the Roman calendar.
Yeah.
So the Roman calendar was used by the Roman Kingdom and the Roman Republic. The term normally is used for the pre-Julian calendars, but it is often used inclusively of the Julian calendar as well, even though the Julian calendar is technically a separate thing.
Okay.
For context and time here, the Roman calendar was pre-45 BC. The Julian calendar is post-45 BC, just so you sort of know the time that we're in. And according to most Roman accounts, the original calendar was established by their legendary first king, Romulus.
Okay.
Makes sense. It consisted of 10 months, beginning in the spring with March.
Oh, hilarious.
And leaving winter as an unassigned span of days before the next year, which I think is
I like
fantastic.
that because now you can calibrate it. You can just whenever,
exactly.
We get to a certain point. Okay, now that's winter.
Now, these months each had 30 or 31 days, and they ran for 38 noondials.
They got 10 months right, but the months had to have 31 days.
Oh, wait, it's about to get a lot fucking weirder. So these months each had 30 or 31 days and ran for 38 noondial cycles.
I don't know what that is.
Each forming a kind of 8-day week. So 9 days would be counted inclusively in the Roman manner and ending with a religious ritual and a public market.
Well, that's a weekend.
It is insane. Now, these were the market days of the ancient Roman calendar, forming a kind of weekend, which for a certain period, they'd rest from the work of the ruling class. Now, that was sort of like the plan. And it was this 8-day week. These were marked on fasti using the nundile letters from A to H. So each day of the week, effectively, their week, had a letter that corresponded to A to H.
Okay.
And the earliest form of the Roman calendar is sometimes said to have included exactly 38 such cycles, running for 304 days from March to December, before a, quote, unorganized expanse of about 50 winter days. So that's sort of that squishy bit that they have.
Sure.
Now, the letters here are kind of important, and this will come up a bit later. But the length of the Republican and the Julian calendars were not evenly divisible by 8. So under these systems, the nundinile, the day of the week, fell on a different letter each year.
Sure.
And these letters form the basis of the later Christian Dominical letters, which, as an aside, are primarily used now as part of the computus, which is how they calculate the date of Easter. And I've always wondered why does Easter bounce around so much?
Sure.
And it turns out it goes back to this calendaring system, and it's still used primarily today to figure out the date of Easter, which is just beyond me.
Right.
I went pretty deep on this rabbit hole, and I had to
I want my peeps in March. I don't want to wait till April.
You don't want to wait till April for your sugar fix?
Exactly.
That's a good point. No, I appreciate
my
that.
marshmallows.
This Roman fixed calendar bore traces of its origin as an observational lunar one. In particular, the most important days of each month seem to have derived from the new moon, the first quarter moon, and the full moon, respectively. This is where it starts to get a little more familiar. Romulus' successor, Numa Pompilius, was then usually credited with a revised calendar that divided winter between the 2 months of January and February.
Okay.
Shortened most other months accordingly and brought everything into rough alignment with the solar year by some system of intercalation. This is the typical element of lunisolar calendars and was necessary to keep the Roman religious festivals and other activities in their proper seasons. Mm-hmm. You had this first Roman calendar was sort of half-baked, 10 months. Then after that, you had
10 months, but with a pickup period. This is going to be winter, and we're going to say when winter starts and ends, and that would keep your calendar. It's a little bit like the referees at a soccer game who can't really tell you when the soccer game is going to end.
That's exactly right.
No, there's 8 more minutes. I don't know why, but there's 8 more minutes.
That's probably where soccer comes from. I think there should be 8 more minutes. It's going to be warmer.
Right.
So we're going to add 8 more minutes at the end of it. No, that's it. That is a perfect analog. I'm disappointed I didn't think of that. No, but that's exactly what it is. Back then, 2,000 plus years ago, 3,000 years ago, you weren't probably thinking a lot about next year, right? So it really didn't matter when it started.
You're trying to survive this year.
You're trying to survive this year. And the winter came and half ain't going to be around in 2 months anyway.
Right.
My hunch is that's part of it. So, okay, so you have this, and then I go, okay, well, we have this strange concept of leap year. Where did this come from? And do you know where you have a general sense, I think, of why leap year exists?
Because a year is not 365 days.
Yeah.
It's 365. It's not even 365 and a quarter days.
Yep.
But it's close to 365 and a quarter days. And so we add this extra day. Why at the end of February, I don't know. There's probably some good reason.
Yep.
But we add this day at the end of February.
Do you know who added it? Do you know who introduced this concept of leap year?
Bill Leap.
You want to try again?
Steve Leap.
His younger brother.
Terry Leap.
One of the Leaps. Somebody in the Leap family. One of them. I don't know. Take a guess. I think you know this. I think if you use your historical context, I think you probably know this.
Caesar.
Oh,
okay.
Right?
So it is part of the Julian calendar.
The Julian calendar, yeah. Because the astronomical events and seasons do not repeat in a whole number of days. That's this challenge that we have. And because of this, these calendars will drift over time. We don't orbit the sun in an exact number of days.
Right.
And we want to try to keep our calendar related to the seasons so that you're not constantly, moving spring earlier and earlier. And they do this by inserting these intercalating days. And that's an additional day, usually as a leap day, or in some calendars, a leap month, that they insert in the calendar so that you can kind of reset. Now, fun fact, I know what intercalate means. It means to interpolate in a calendar. I can't believe there's actually a word for interpolating in a calendar, but it's intercalate.
So specific.
You probably know the answer to this. I was going to ask you, do you know what happened on New Year's Day in 45 BC? But then I realized you were so young then.
Thank you.
You probably barely remember.
Thank you.
And I just didn't think that it was fair. Anyway, okay, so Julius Caesar, as Jeff has already pointed out, he reformed the historic Roman calendar by edict on January 1st of 45 BC to make it a consistent solar calendar rather than one which was neither strictly lunar nor strictly solar. It was sort of this thing in between.
Right.
They removed the need for these frequent intercalary months.
The moon has stunningly little to do with how often we orbit the sun.
Exactly. Turns out
these two things are not correlated.
Has about nothing to do with it. So his calendar was no longer dependent on the observation of the new moon, but simply followed an algorithm of introducing a leap day every 4 years. And this created a disassociation of the calendar month from the lunation. That was the whole point of the Julian calendar. His rule for leap years was a simple one. Add a leap day every 4 years. Full stop.
Yeah.
Super simple.
It's not going to work. Now you're going to drift in the other direction.
But you're better, right? You're at least better.
Oh, for sure.
You're better. Now, I never knew that the Julian calendar was named after Julius Caesar. I always assumed it was named after the orange Julius's in the mall. I thought that's where it came from.
Oh, I'd like that better.
Right?
Sure.
Doesn't that make more sense?
That would have been too late. We've been using it way before there were orange Julius.
So you were asking about February. Prior to Caesar's creation of what would end up being called the Julian calendar, February was already the shortest month of the year for Romans, right? Remember, they injected January and February, and they made February small. In the Roman calendar, after the reform from Pompeius that added January and February, all months except February had an odd number of days, 29 or 31. And this was because of a Roman superstition that even numbers were unlucky.
Wow.
Well, yeah, when Caesar changed the calendar to follow the solar year closely, he made all months have 30 or 31 days, leaving February unchanged except in leap years. Now, in the Julian calendar, and this is one of the most fascinating things I learned doing this, in the Julian calendar, while leap day always fell within February, it was not at the end of the month as we do now. Instead, February 24th was doubled to create 2 days, both dated February 24th.
Oh, that's awesome.
They just doubled it. Even more strange.
February 24th XL.
Even more strange, the leap day was simply not counted. A leap year still had 365 days, even though it actually had 366.
Oh yeah, just one of the days was really long.
They just pretended it wasn't there, which is crazy to me. And now I'm no expert on this, right? I'm just learning this, but I'm assuming this is where the basis for Enron's accounting practices came from.
Sure, exactly.
Right? Like
it's recalibration day. Let's just reset.
Totally. It'll be fine. Now in England, the church and civil society continued the Roman practice whereby the leap day was simply not counted, so that a leap year was only reckoned as 365 days until Henry III's 1236 statute, which was called the Di Anno et Dei Bissextial, which instructed magistrates to treat the leap day and the day before as one day, which is insane.
Sure, that makes it harder.
I don't know how that would work.
Do you have to come to work on the extra long day twice?
I think if whoever the fuck Henry III says. I think if Henry III says you go to work, you fucking go to work. I don't think he's just like, well, it's the same day, Henry. And they're like,
I already did my shift for today.
Yeah, they don't. I think they just cut your head off. I don't think it's. I don't think you quite had
not
these
a lot
rights
of discussion.
Then. Yeah. One more day to try to avoid the plague. Okay, so Caesar's algorithm was close to reality, as this is what Jeff was saying. A Julian year lasts 365 and a quarter days, right? Because you're adding 1 day every 4 years. Now, a mean tropical year was about 365.2422 days. So very, very close, right? 0.25 being a quarter, 0.2422 days being just a little bit under that. Yeah. Now, consequently, the Julian calendar will drift out of this true year, I'm putting it in quotes, folks, by about 3 days every 400 years.
Right.
And
which will add up.
Which will add up, right? You're going to like interest. This thing's going to accrue. The Julian calendar continued in use unaltered for about 1600 years until the who became concerned with a deviation. Somebody around 1500s became concerned with a deviation.
The Gregorian people.
No.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing.
Timothy Gregorian and his sister Jill.
You're close.
Jill and Tim.
Let's just say it's the 1500s. What large body of very powerful people would be concerned?
I promise the answer is going to be something stupid like the Pope, because you're going to bump into his religious holidays.
So the Catholic Church became concerned about the widening divergence between the March equinox and the 21st of March on the calendar, right? I'm assuming that the reason they were concerned about this in March is because this would affect how their parishioners would and when they would create their early March Madness brackets.
Oh, sure. That's it.
Like, you don't want to be doing that too late into the season. No. I got a lot of these shitty jokes through here, so the best thing you can do is just laugh at them. Yeah, I would just laugh at them, and we just move on.
And move forward.
To understand this out of sync issue, you first have to know how long a year really is. Yeah. Now, I just told you that it was 365 days, 0.2422.
But you were lying.
Well, that's the best they sort of knew at the time. As it turns out, in the 11th century in Persia, a calendar reform led by, I'm going to screw this up, Khayyam, was announced in 1079 when the length of the year was measured to 11 decimal places, which is insane.
Yeah, sure.
11 decimal places. This is the other thing that I got in this segment that I thought was super crazy. The length of the year is changing, right? Every year it changes. We're slowing down. Yeah. In your lifetime, the length of the year will change within the 6th decimal place, within your lifetime, which is kind of crazy. So for comparison, the length of the year at the end of the 19th century was 365 days, 0.242196. That's the 6 decimal places. Okay. While at the end of the 20th century, it was 0.242190. So 6 millionths of a day difference across 100 years, which again doesn't sound like a ton, not enough for you or I to perceive it. But the fact is, it is going slower. And you got to think about this shit relative to the astronomical position. And there's a bunch of things we've had to do since this to correct for that. And I think that's pretty fascinating. So I'm going to keep plowing ahead here in some form of order, but any questions?
Good so far. We just keep making it a little more accurate.
Yes, exactly. You would just the change that brought us to our current calendar, as I was mentioning, and this is the Gregorian calendar, which is what, for clarity here, most of the world uses the Gregorian calendar currently, right? This is the calendar that we all know. Everybody listening to this show sort of knows as their calendar.
Yeah.
It went into effect in October of 1582 following the papal bull Inter Gravius Mas by Pope Gregory the 12th. Now, Inter Gravius Mas means among the most serious. So he put out this papal bull that was, quote, among the most serious.
Okay.
It was introduced as a modification of and replacement for the Julian calendar, which was about roughly 1,600 years old at that point.
The pages had all yellowed.
They were all super yellowed, handwritten. The principal change was to space leap years differently so as to make the average calendar year 365.2425 days long, more closely approximating the 365.2422 day tropical or, quote, solar year that is determined by the Earth's revolution around the sun. And the way they did this, so remember the Julian algorithm was you add 1 day every 4 years, right? That's your leap year. So they kept that the same as the Julian calendar. However, the extra leap day would occur in each year that is a multiple of 4, same as Caesar's, except for years evenly divisible by 100, but not by 400. So you had said earlier, it's every 100 years they don't do it. It's actually not. It's every 400 years you don't do it.
Sure,
and that's how you get that little bit of...
I knew there was something that they threw in there to correct.
Yeah. Now, the secondary reason for this change was that in the years since the First Council of Nicaea, this is like AD 325, the excess leap days introduced by the Julian algorithm had caused the calendar to drift such that the northern spring equinox was occurring well before its nominal March 21st date.
Sure.
And this date was important to the Christian churches because it is a fundamental to the calculation of the date of Easter. So, to reinstate this association, the reform advanced the date by 10 days. So, Thursday, October 4th, 1582, was followed by Friday, October 15th, 1582. They fucking added 11 days to the calendar. You got all this weird shit going on, right?
So, anybody who's looking back at history will look back and there seems like a gap where nobody did anything for like a week and a half.
Well, I think if you want to see somebody's like a real calendar dork, you just tell them something happened on October 5th, 1582 and see if they laugh. Like if they laugh, they know the joke because that day didn't exist. The reform also altered the lunar cycle used by the church to calculate the date for Easter because the astronomical new moons were occurring 4 days before the calculated dates. So the reform introduced these minor changes. The calendar continued to be fundamentally based on the same geocentric theory as its predecessor. Okay. That was a pretty big change, and arguably the Gregorian calendar is the best we have in the world's most widely used civil calendar ever.
Does anyone use a different calendar now?
Yeah.
Of course they do. My bad.
There's a handful of them, but there's one that's super interesting. There's only really one that I wanted to highlight. But before I get to that, I do think this is interesting to note that after this 10-day adjustment and, as part of the Gregorian calendar, the Gregorian offset, so this is the dropping the leap year every 400 years, has only happened twice since its inception. And we were all there for one of them. It happened once in 1600, which was 28 years after the papal bull was issued. And then once again in 2000. Sure. And those are the only 2 times that's happened. Right? I just think it's kind of cool that since it's been out, it's only happened twice. You had to drop that leap year. You were asking about other calendars. There is something called the revised Julian calendar. And this was a new calendar. It's also known as the Milankovitch calendar because that was the guy who created it. It was proposed in 1923 by a Serbian scientist, I'm going to screw up his name, Milutin Milanovic, as a more accurate alternative to both the Julian and the Gregorian calendars. It adds an extra day to February in years that are multiples of 4, except for years that are multiples of 100 that do not leave a remainder of 200 or 600 when divided by 900. I swear to you, I did not make this up. So this rule, this is what's kind of cool. This rule agrees with the rule for the Gregorian calendars until 2799.
Yeah.
So in 2800, these will deviate. That's the first year where they will deviate. And because it'll be a leap year in the Gregorian calendar, but not in the revised Julian calendar. Now, this rule gives an average year length of 365 days, 0.242222 days. So it's
that seems a little better.
A little bit closer. It's a very good approximation to the mean tropical year. But because the vernal equinox is slightly longer, the revised Julian calendar, at least for the time being, does not do as good of a job as the Gregorian calendar at keeping the vernal equinox on or close to March 21st. This is fascinating. Now, it has not been widely adopted. The Orthodox churches have adopted it, and the ones that have are known as, again, not making this up, the new calendarists, which I think should be.
Oh, yes, they are. Of course they are.
I think it should be the name of our band, the New Calendarists.
And they won't speak to the old calendarists because it's just they're.
Oh yeah,
it's a
those
sect
guys are dead
difference.
To them. Yeah, those guys are totally dead.
Exactly.
To them.
Those people are going to hell.
How dare you divide by 400? No. What you need to do is divide by 900 and then check the remainder.
Exactly.
If the remainder is 200, whatever the fuck it was. Like, what are you thinking?
Don't marry one of those girls.
Exactly. 2000 is going to come along. You're going to be off. So I am kind of fascinated. Like if I go the Walt Disney route and get frozen, wake me up in 27.99 because I want to see what the hell's going to happen if we're all partying like it's,
Walt's not frozen, but
I know, but I like the joke. Okay, so do you know why it's called leap year?
Because of Bill and Tina Leap. I don't know. Did you know a Learjet? There's actually a guy named Bill Lear, and so every time you say Leap, I keep thinking of Bill Lear. The Learjet was his invention.
You could say Bill Leap. It was Bill Leap. I just told you that it was Julius Caesar who came up with it, right? And then Pope Gregory who changed it. So why is it called a leap year? What are you leaping?
You're leaping a day every 3 years.
But you're not. You're adding a day every 4 years. You got both parts of that.
But no. It's see, for you the glass is half empty.
That doesn't make any sense. The term leap year, it seems like we're not sure as people, but we believe that the term leap year probably comes from the fact that a fixed date in the Gregorian calendar normally advances one day of the week from one year to the next.
Okay.
But the day of the week in the 12 months following the leap day, right? So from March 1st through February 20th of the following year, will advance 2 days to the extra day, thus leaping over one day in the week.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So for example...
It still doesn't, but when I listen back to it, it will.
So for example...
I'll be in my car listeing to the episode and this will all come clear to me,
I'll be honest with you. I had to read this 3 times to really understand it. So, and then here's an example. So for example, Christmas Day, so December 25th, fell on a Friday in 2020, a Saturday in 2021, and a Sunday in 2022, right?
Okay.
In 2023.
I can follow that.
So last year, it was on a Monday.
Okay.
But next year, will leap over Tuesday and fall on Wednesday.
Okay, so it's we're leaping a day.
You're leaping a day, which is such a weird way. That you're leaping a day in.
That's such a weird way to look
right?
at it. Yeah.
But that's where we think it came from. Now, I also think this is mildly fucked for Christmas because Christmas could have been Taco Tuesday this year, but now it's going to be on Wednesday. So there's no Christmas Taco Tuesday, which I'm.
But at least we get 2 celebrations and not one.
You can have Christmas Eve Taco Tuesday. You're right.
Yeah.
Forget Christmas Eve. We're going to celebrate Taco Tuesday. And then there were a couple interesting traditions that that I found out about leap year that I did not know. In Ireland and in Britain, do you know what the tradition is on leap year? There's a tradition.
In Ireland and Britain, it's got to be to get married.
Very, very good.
And in Greek, it's got to be to not get married because Greeks are crazy about everything, and everything that everybody else thinks is lucky, they think is unlucky.
It is a tradition in Ireland and Britain that women may propose marriage only in leap years.
Oh, that's interesting.
How interesting is that, right?
Sadie Hawkins, is it related to the cartoon strip Little Abner and Sadie Hawkins?
I don't know.
Is that unrelated?
I don't know. It could be.
Sadie Hawkins was when the girls could ask out the boys.
That's funny.
And we always had at our high school a Sadie Hawkins dance, and it was literally the most fun dance of the year.
Oh, that's fantastic. I didn't know that. Well, so supposedly a 1288 law by Queen Margaret of Scotland. Now, for perspective,
well, that would have preceded Little Abner
a little bit. For perspective, she was
and newspapers.
She was age 5 and living in Norway at the time. She required that fines be levied if a marriage proposal was refused by the man. Compensation was deemed to be a pair of leather gloves, a single rose, £1, and a kiss.
Oh, that's sweet.
Now, I got that off Wikipedia. It is tagged as citation needed, but I did think it was still cute to read.
That's so sweet.
Now, in some places, the tradition was tightened, restricting female proposals to the modern leap day, February 29th, or to the medieval leap day, February 24th. So you couldn't do it all year. You could only do it on one day. According to a play from around the turn of the 17th century, the leap year woman had to wear breeches. A few hundred years later, breeches wouldn't do it at all. Women looking to take advantage of their opportunity to pitch a man were expected to wear a scarlet petticoat.
Okay.
Anybody wearing pants and a red jacket, don't make eye contact with them with this year. Like, just don't.
That you don't want to marry.
If there's exactly.
Otherwise, you owe them gloves and a rose.
And a pound and a kiss. Yeah. In Finland, the tradition is that if a man refuses a woman's proposal on leap day, he should buy her the fabric for a skirt.
Oh, that's bizarre.
So bizarre.
And how do you know it's fabric she'll want?
I have no
for her
idea.
Skirt?
It didn't say she had to want it. It just said,
does she get to pick it out?
Here's some burlap.
And I just write the check? How does that work?
There's a lot of specifics here. In France, since at least 1980, there's a satirical newspaper that is published only on leap year on February 29th. Which I thought was kind of cool.
Hard to make any money publishing that infrequently, but sure.
Yeah, I don't think you're making much money, but they're French. Their job's not to make money. It's to inject culture to the rest of the world. Now, you mentioned Greece. In Greece, marriage in leap year is considered unlucky.
That's what I would guess, because they're always the opposite on these things.
So check this out. The stat is 1 in 5 engaged couples in Greece will plan to avoid getting married in a leap year.
In the whole year?
In the whole year, yeah.
Not just on the leap day.
the whole year.
Oh, wow.
Just push it out a year. I also think it's worth noting here that we have this concept, within these leap days of leap seconds. And this is where we will insert seconds into UTC, Coordinated Universal Time, because of variations in the Earth's rotation period.
Sure.
I knew that was a thing. However, I presumed it was on a predicted schedule. It is not, because leap seconds can't be introduced sort of algorithmically because the length of the day are not entirely predictable, which I thought was fascinating. Yeah. I assumed that it was, but it's
because
not.
The Earth is not round; it's more potato-shaped, and so the rotation is imperfect.
Okay, so this brings up a couple interesting recurring problems.
We should get out a belt sander and fix the Earth. We should smooth those sections out.
I'm sorry, all you folks. We need to shave you down by about 10 miles into the mantle. I'm sorry, you're totally fucked. Okay, a person born on February 29th may be called do you know what they're called?
Leaper.
A leaper or a
leapling.
Lemur. I like leapling better.
Leapling. I like leapling.
Now, in common years, they usually celebrate their birthdays on 28th of February. That's sort of the normal day to celebrate.
Even though that's not their birthday.
In some situations, March 1st is used as their birthday in a non-leap year, right? Since it's the day following the 28th. Now, technically, a leapling will have fewer birthdays and anniversaries, right? And this phenomenon, quote, may be exploited for dramatic effect, right? If a person is declared to be only a quarter of their actual age.
Yes.
An example of this, and this one you might know, is in Gilbert and Sullivan's 1879 comic opera, The Pirates of Penzance. Frederick, he was the pirate's apprentice, discovered that he is bound to serve the pirate until his 21st birthday. But that's when he would turn 88, since he was born in a leap year. Right? So for legal purposes, legal birthdays depend on how local laws count time intervals. For example, the Civil Code of Taiwan, at least since October of 1929, implies that the legal birthday of a leapling is February 28th in common years. In Hong Kong...
Oh, they standardized
But in Hong Kong, they put it on March 1st. At least since 1990.
Okay.
The day you for legal issues, the day you celebrate it is dependent on where you sit,
where you live, sure,
which is kind of crazy.
So that makes a difference, like when you get your license.
I would think, yeah,
and when you can vote, and when you can drink, and when you can be drafted.
And then of course leap years present all sorts of havoc in computing because if you don't account for the leap year bug, if you're just doing some shitty math to try to figure out what the day is, and you get that wrong, that can be extremely bad.
Yeah.
When you deal with dates, and if you're a technologist, if you deal with software in any form, there is at least one ISO standard that you must embrace, and that's ISO 8601.
Okay.
Which is the only way to exchange date and time information with anyone else, with another program, with another human.
Sure.
It is literally the only way to do it because it's the only one that is standardized and obvious across all geography.
Okay.
I used to get a whole bunch of data and spreadsheets that were in a non-US format for dates, and I would wrap my brain around something. I'd be like, wait a minute, what? Like that's the 3rd of June? That doesn't make any sense. And you realize, they mean March 6th.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, fuck. But I would literally, it would take me, I'd have to get lucky. I'd have to find one and be like, there's no month 13. And then I'd figure out.
Oh, that's what that is.
That's what they mean.
Sure.
So it's not obvious. So anyway, so if you support ISO 8601, it's year, month, day. There's an encoding for time zone and time. It tells you everything you need to know. It's a very pretty string. It's the only thing you should use.
Because 8600 was absolute garbage.
Yeah, totally. It was all epoch time. The flasks that I made for all the folks that joined us at our wedding, all the guys that were like my buddies that were there, I engraved on the flasks the latitude and longitude of where the wedding was, and then a really big int. And I just left it there to see who would figure it out. And there were a couple guys who were like,
which was the time?
Is this the epoch time of the wedding? And I was like, yep. And they're like, you're a dork. Yep.
But that's if you program and you're used to epoch time, that number is so distinctive. Totally. You kind of go, oh, I know what
of course. How can you not? I mean, you see a huge string of digits. And
in recent years, it's been 14, 15, 16, 17 that it started with.
The epoch time. Yeah. One of my good friends who was there, he did get it. I was like, what do you think that number is? He was like, didn't even phase him for but maybe 2 seconds. He was like, epoch time? I was like, fuck. I guess I'm not that
nice.
I'm not that cute.
Not that cryptic.
Nope.
All right, we have to get out of here, Mr. Cryptic. But quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
I have. I think was it last week that I plugged Jon Stewart over back on Daily Show?
Correct.
He had some guests last week that were from Strict Scrutiny, which is one of the Crooked Media podcasts.
Sure.
That I think are absolutely great. This show is hosted by 3 badass constitutional law professors. They provide in-depth, accessible, and irrelevant analysis of the Supreme Court, its cases, its culture, its personalities.
2 of whom were on the Daily Show. Why was the 3rd not?
I think she was in LA. I mean, the joke that Stewart made was that they couldn't fit at the desk, which could actually be true.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was pretty funny. Like, can you just get her a folding chair or make another desk? I don't know. Anyway, so each week they break down the latest headlines and biggest legal questions that are facing our country, emphasizing what it all means. And as they say, and I absolutely loved this, whether you're a lawyer or law student or just intrigued by messy legal dramas, their show has you covered. New episodes drop every Monday, plus bonus episodes whenever SCOTUS takes away another one of our rights.
It's funny, but it's sad.
Anyway, it's a great. They do an absolutely great job. They are super smart. I love their approach to what is otherwise considered, pretty dry content.
Oh, there's nothing dry about it. It has a huge effect on a lot of people's lives. That's fascinating.
But it's really great.
I will definitely check that.
Please
out.
do. How about you?
American Fiction.
Yeah,
it's a movie starring Jeffrey Wright, Tracy Ellis Ross, and Sterling K. Brown. A frustrated novelist professor writes an outlandish satire of a stereotypical black book. It's mistaken by the liberal elite for serious literature and then published to both high sales and critical praise, propelling him into the heart of the very hypocrisy and madness he disdains.
That's great.
There's a better actor in American film than Jeffrey Wright. I don't know who it is. Maybe Sterling K. Brown, but you get them both in this film. Some movies are good, a few are great. This is close to a perfect movie.
That's incredible.
American Fiction on pay-per-view, streaming services now, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play Movies, YouTube, etc., etc.
I'm really glad you've expanded your shilling.
I'm shilling for everybody now.
That's great. I mean,
this is a really good movie. You're going to enjoy this tremendously. It was so good.
I'll have to add this to my list. I never get time in front of the television, ever. All right, you've sold me. Yeah. I'll check it out.
That is the episode.
Thank you for joining us for All This Nonsense, a truly terrible podcast from The Awful Company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm Stu Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like it. Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, AntennaPod, iHeartRadio, Spotify, my favorite Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Or just go to podcastindex.org. They have lots of apps that all use their amazing podcast index. Special thanks to our floor director, Scott Little.
Thanks, Skippy. We'll be here every Thursday morning for more nonsense. Please join us. Happy Leap Year.
Happy Leap Year. Did you get your Mayan calendar this year with like Pomeranians on it?
With Pomeranians? Is that how that works?
Yeah. It's like photographs of sailboats or girls or, firemen.
Or Pomeranians. Is that all in one calendar? I would buy that calendar. If I could have firemen, Pomeranians, girls.
The Mayans really knew how to sell calendars.
It's the I can't choose calendar.